So today I'm here to talk to you about phones, and I'm not here to tell you if they're good or bad. What I'm going to do is unpack a little bit about what they mean to us, what they mean in our lives, and what the research is kind of telling us around them. So this year marks 10 years now of smartphones, and they've, in the last 10 years, illuminated and invaded and transformed and infiltrated all the parts of our lives and the way we work, the way we do business, everything. So recently you'll have noticed that there's been a lot of news reports and press happening around this. Things like researchers linking it to learning disorders in kids. We're also seeing stuff about mental health disorders, effects of phones on our society, and also more largely about how we engage with each other, how we communicate and connect with each other. I want to talk a little bit about how we kind of got here. And really, if we think about it, the phone's not the problem. The phone is just a really effective way of delivering software into our lives and apps. So these apps, they cover extremely diverse parts of our lives. Everything from gaming to entertainment to socialising to getting work done. These apps have improved and they've transformed many parts of our lives. But they can also manipulate and exploit certain flaws in our human nature, and we need to be aware of that. So now more than ever, we can access this stuff anywhere. All of these things we can do from any device anywhere, not just our phones, but also our Chromebooks as well. So it's important that we understand that these distractions are here and these risks are here as well. So it's easy to think that this ecosystem of apps is just kind of evolving at random and filling people's needs, but in fact it's not evolving at random, and by design it's heading in a very specific direction. And I want to talk about that today. And that direction is largely focused around our time, because behind every app there's hundreds of app developers sitting around analysing every swipe, every click, every button you press in rooms like this. And that means those engineers use that data to measure themselves. And the way they measure themselves in their apps is by how much of your time their apps are able to take. And of course, the more time they take, the more money they make. So you need to be mindful of how they're doing this. The first way they do this is they steal time from other apps. And we see that in things like Instagram doing stuff that Snapchat does, right? They're trying to steal time away from other apps. And that makes sense. That's how capitalism works. And when we peek at our phones, which, by the way, we do over 100 times a day, we may have a setup that looks something like that. And obviously, those app developers are trying to steal that time away. And the second, more kind of insidious way that they make more money and steal our time is by taking it from our leisure time. And this is really bad because obviously this is the time you're spending with your family. This is the time you're looking after your health at the gym or eating correctly. You've got time that you're studying and that crucial time that you're spending with your friends and your family. This is where that time's coming from. And if you look at this graph here, we've almost doubled the amount of time we spend on our phones in just 3 years. And this is in adults. This is not even in teenagers. In teenagers, the data's a little bit worse. So we need to be mindful of that. So how does this happen? How's this time being stolen? Well, there's a few ways. And it's important that you understand what apps are doing and the persuasive techniques they use, because those engineers that are sitting in that room are focusing on trying to do this sort of stuff to steal that time, your time away. So things like stopping cues, auto-playing that next video, scrolling through an infinite feed that never ends. That stuff is really addictive, and it helps you stay in the app, helps you stay in that experience. Negative consequences. So a lot of this stuff with Snapchat streaks, if you're in a streak with somebody else for 100 days and you let it down, then that other person's going to be disappointed with you. So that puts you in a negative bind, right? So you don't want to lose it. You don't want to be the one who loses that streak. And the same happens in a smaller way with email and with Hangouts messages and with SMS. People expect you to get back straight away. If we sent a letter 10 years ago, you don't expect a response the next day. But with email and Hangouts being so instant, there is an expectation we're letting people down. So that's another way that it's sort of driven home. Games use this concept of the sunk cost fallacy, whereby we invest so much time and sometimes money into games that we don't want to stop. We think, I've invested so much, I need to keep going. But in fact, what you are losing is your time. And of course, the power of suggestion. So us getting emails and notifications around, hey, you might like this. and the marketing that happens, where everyone's so happy on their phones and so engaged on their phones. But the reality is not that. We've all been in a meeting or a lunch with somebody where they're on their phone and they're not talking to you, and it's not great. So why does this matter? Well, if we look at the research around overusing of phones, we see it's linked and correlated very closely to feeling more stress, more anxiety, sleeping less well, and even reducing our attention spans down to, I think they're down to 9 seconds this year was the report. That's like in goldfish territory. So we've got to be careful about how we're able to focus. And of course, scientific studies showing the ratio of neurotransmitters like GABA being so high that it's actually slowing the neuron functioning of the brain in extreme cases. So this stuff can have physiological and health impacts in our lives that can permeate everywhere. So this is our real challenge: is how do we mediate the use of technology in our lives? And we all have this challenge. It's not just a challenge for me, it's not just a challenge for you, it's a challenge for everyone. Everyone in the world's facing this challenge. And Arianna Huffington, who runs the Huffington Post, is in this space. Her job is to take your attention, to get eyeballs on her news posts. And she has written a big piece about this, saying our ability to succeed in the technology-dominated workplace of the future depends in no small measure on our ability right now to take back control of our technology and our lives. I completely agree with that. We need to be more mindful about how technology is being used. And some ways we can do that is just asking ourselves a few questions. We can say, why do we have a smartphone? What are we trying to do with it? And if we marry that up with the way we use it, does it match? Is the reason I have a smartphone what I actually use it for? And are we making an intentional choice to use those apps? Is that something that we choose to do, or do we get sucked into something else? When we check the time, are we looking at a message instead? So thinking about that. Is there an uncomfortable situation that you're avoiding in dealing with using your phones and using your apps? So are you sort of using it as a shield to something else, something uncomfortable? And often these apps and games and things can encourage behaviours that you may not respect or like. Things like self-control and patience. How are you dealing with those things? And has your enjoyment, this is a big one, has your enjoyment of using these apps changed over time? You may have initially loved it, but now you're stuck in these double binds, or you're stuck doing things that you actually don't want to do. So really, I challenge you to think about those questions. And just finally, if we just sort of step back for a second, phones and laptops and apps and everything we use, they're only going to get more noisy. They're only going to get more pervasive and more adept at stealing our time. So it's up to us. All the world's information is in our pocket. All of our friends are in our pocket. This is an unprecedented freedom we have. Never in human history have we had this sort of freedom. But with freedom comes responsibility, and we need to make sure that we're getting out of life what we want. If we want to reach our dreams, if we want to do well at school and be that record-breaking athlete, or achieve our life goals and be happy, then we need to look at what are we spending our time on. And every notification that we get, we're doing a little bit of work. And is that work for you, or is that work for a company, for somebody else? So make sure that you're taking control of your time. Because we can put our phone away, we can turn off notifications, we can choose to talk to those around us, we can choose to live a life where you get the freedom to spend your time on the things that really matter to you. Thanks for listening.